Lokati here. Today we are on our final class on the 1 Divine to T17 completion series. This is probably one of the least played classes over all of PoE, and it is the SCION Ascendant. It's usually relegated to only armor stacking or weird builds like Relic of the Past. But we are going to be doing a Lightning Strike build with a self-cast Sniper's Mark, Blood Rage, and Smite for some additional damage here. We'll be doing an Abomination T17 map with power charges, 60% less effective curses on monsters, curses ignite, freeze, and shock on hit, and unstable tentacle fiends and rare monsters the area are shaped or touched. Normally, we would want to run Soul of Lunaris for the additional defenses, but because we do not have freeze immunity, we do need to take Soul of the Brine King for this, and then we'll be taking Aberrath for the ignite. And you should always be ready to change your Pantheon based on your map to make the map easier or harder, depending on what your flavor is. So let's hop in. Clear is pretty straightforward. You're a Lightning Strike character, so you just Lightning Strike. There's nothing complex here. You're just going to keep throwing out lightning bolts the whole time you're clearing. We're going to get action speed debuffed by the Tentacle Fiends, but that's alright. Now you do want to keep Blood Rage up as long as you're killing stuff. Blood Rage will refresh itself. If you're not killing stuff, then you'll have to manually refresh Blood Rage. For large targets like this, you can smite once to get a debuff, or to get a lightning aura buff, and then you can attack one time with your, or you can hit him one time with your Sniper's Mark for additional damage on him. All these Tentacle Fiend debuffs are not fun. As you can see, Lightning Strike is a phenomenal clearing skill. We are running 3 Pierce on the Lightning Strike and Return Proj on the Lightning Strike, so we can hit 6 targets per lightning bolt thingy, and we cast 5 projectiles, so that's 30 hits possible per cast, and this results in actually really good clear. As far as DPS goes, Lightning Strike DPS is a little tough to nail down sometimes because it depends on where you're positioned relative to the target and how many projectiles you're going to be able to get returned on them based on the angle of the Sniper's Mark returns and things like that. But we're somewhere between 1 and 2 million DPS overall, which is really solid for the amount of survivability we have. Now the Ascendant does not have nearly the recovery that all of the other classes in this series have had, so she's going to rely more on her automated flask for recovery and a lot on leech for recovery. And we have a Carnage Heart, which can help out with that leech recovery as well. And of course, Tentacle Fiends are going to spawn on top of the boss portal room here. So we're going to have to wait for those to go down. There we go. And into the boss's room. As you can see, clear is pretty solid. We're going to start off by killing Dodri first, because we don't like to deal with her monoliths when we have a bunch of other ghosted bosses up. So go ahead and target Dodri first. Now, like I said, positioning is very important on Lightning Strike, so you need to stand a distance away from the target so that your non-ball strikes are hitting the target, which is about this distance right here. And so when she moves in on you, you're going to have to move back. Keep your Blood Rage going. And anytime bosses are charging you on Lightning Strike, it's just a dance of moving back and forth and back and forth. And we do not have a Culling Strike here, so we're just going to have to manually kill everything. There was really not enough spaces on our toolbar to keep it or to add it. If you didn't want to manage Smite for the additional damage, however, you could just go ahead and run that. Now this is going to get a little sketchy for a minute because we are going to be taking a tremendous amount of extra damage from the Dodri being ghosted and from the red monolith being up here. But we're going to work on killing this red monolith here, and if we get too low, we'll just try to dodge out of some nasty abilities. But we may have to use a portal or two to get through this part of the phase. We're doing 50% less damage because of the other 2 monoliths, and we're taking 25% more. plus the additional damage from Dodri. Now if you do see your health low, you can spam your flasks real quick to get a quick boost in your healing, because every time you use a flask you recover 4% of your health. Now obviously these are going to be going off manually when charges reach full, but that does give you like a little bit of a oh shit button. You could also swap out your sulfur flask for a life flask if you really wanted a little bit of additional manual assistance in your survivability here. And we are running double curses on the bosses, both Enfeeble and Punishment, for survivability. But sometimes that's not enough. As with the gauntlet goes, 3 portals still counts. There goes 1. Now that that one is down, we're going to take significantly less damage. We can go ahead and just move on to the other monoliths here. Again, keep your smite buff up. I know it's hard to see because the boss's health bars now cover our buff meter up there. Apparently DGG doesn't want us strategizing around maintaining buffs. Same thing goes with your blood rage. You only have to hit blood rage about once every 10 seconds. You hit smite once every 4 seconds. Now we cannot sniper's mark the monolith, but you should keep a sniper's mark up because that will just cause more projectiles to fly around the screen. More projectiles flying around means more damage. Now if you have the budget for it, a Vol Lightning Strike is also a really solid choice for additional boss damage. But we just stuck with a very, very cheap standard 2020 Lightning Strike. Now Malagaro is probably going to go down here before we're able to get to the next monolith and get it killed. With Malagaro down, just be careful. He does put out a degen that's pretty nasty. So be ready just to piano key your flask to stay alive. You can also jump out of his ground degens, but we want to stack those up on the sides of the room rather than in the center of the room. With this monolith down, we're going to go ahead and kill Chevron. Again, you kind of want to be just outside of melee range for this. All that degen. The life flask would have been nice right there. Our little 4% health return on these flasks was not cutting it. Again, keep your positioning in a good spot. That's... oh, man. That damage. Unfortunately, we cannot curse the ghosted creatures, so they are doing like 33% more damage than they would when they were out earlier. And, of course, they have new abilities which will make them do even more damage. Portals are a defense, they're just not the ones that we would prefer to use. And when she's up in the air, feel free to jump around and just dodge things. You can't do any damage to her while she's up in the air. And this is the nastiest part of the fight. Whenever Chevron goes down, the next boss is very, very easy for us to kill. Come on. And look, damage looks to be around 2 million DPS based on how quickly this boss is dying. That's good damage. And Chavron is down, so we get a big boy out. He's probably going to be an asshole sitting that degen, but that's okay. We are a ranged class. So just get a good position, and then don't stand in puddles. He's going to periodically drop a red and a purple puddle on the ground. That purple puddle right there lowers your action speed, and then the red puddle makes you take increased damage. Now the red puddle stacks up to 10 times for 50% increased damage, so if you stand in that, you will very likely die. Same thing as before, keep your smite buff up as often as you can, and keep your blood rage up as often as you can. Ooh. That ignite is destroying us. Aberrath only goes so far. We don't have a whole lot of passive regen. So whenever he hits us with a big ignite like that, it's bad news. Positioning is still important on this guy, so make sure you are standing back far enough from him to not be in melee, but close enough that your little non-vol strike guy leaps out and hits him. Now against melee bosses, there is a whole lot more just running around and repositioning and running around and repositioning. And that's just part of playing Lightning Strike. Now, once he gets down to 50% health here, he will start dying more quickly. We'll get a big execute bonus from our punishment curse. He keeps putting purple stuff down where I want to stand. Now I've stopped keeping up Blood Rage because his ignite damage was getting a little crazy there. We're back to taking this a little bit slower by not utilizing Blood Rage. We did get 5 stacks of that buff right there, so be careful for a minute while you're waiting for those stacks to fall off. And T17 completed on the SCION on a 1 div budget. Let's go ahead and take a look at our POB here. Get the right one pulled up here. Alright. So on our POB, we'll look at our items first. We have a Gale Slicer serrated foil. This is just a generic double LE sword that we have crafted, hits can't be evaded on. And this is going to be the most expensive part of your purchase here. To search for this item, this is what we would do. Come into Path of Exile trade. We're looking for an empty prefix modifier on the sword. And then we're looking for a sword with elemental DPS and a one-handed sword. Now, technically speaking, the Scion does not need to use a sword. We can look at any one-handed weapons, and if there's a great claw up there that grants life on hit, that would be huge for our recovery. But a sword is what I ended up getting. You're going to search for empty prefixes, one-handed weapon, and some elemental DPS. And then we're just going to hit a budget of, we'll say, 30 chaos. And then we're going to sort by elemental DPS. And this one's good, this one's good, this one's good, this one's good. This claw is phenomenal. It has good attack speed, double LE, empty prefix, a little bit of fire res on there which can help with your build, and 46 life per enemy hit. Now if you wanted to use this claw, you would buy this claw. You would come in, you would go and spend 30 chaos, or 36 chaos, whatever, 3 exalted orbs on hits can't be evaded. And then you would go to your runesmithing bench and just stick on something useful. Now this one has fire and cold damage. Looks like the fire damage, or the cold damage is the highest roll. So we would apply a cold damage craft on this one. That way it is easier to hit our Trinity numbers more frequently. And we would add that to our build. And that one, compared to the weapon we used, is Claw. 739,000 DPS. So significantly less DPS for the Claw than the sword, but 46 life per enemy hit is also very nice. The sword gives you that 25% global crit multi, and then the sword that I got also has global crit multi on it. And so that's a higher DPS weapon. If you wanted something similar, this one right here with a crit chance for 20 chaos would be a much better choice in that situation. And so just take a look at the weapons. Any of these will work. You're going to spend between 15 and 30 chaos on the weapon, and then 30 to 40 chaos on the craft, and then everything else is relatively cheap. You got 1 to 5 chaos for a shield with life recovered when you block, or you can just buy a generic shaper shield and alt slam it until you get life recovered when you block, and then benchcraft on increased chance to block. 5C for a Crown of the Inward Eye, 5C for a Chaos Heart. You can get something with good corruptions on either of these. Same thing with a Thunder Fist. 1C for a Thunder Fist, get a good corruption on it. 1C for Windscream, get a good corruption on it. Get you a decent Carnage Heart. They're still cheap, and it is like 17C to get the attribute catalysts on it. So get a good attribute one, get attribute catalysts on it. It helps meet all of your attribute requirements. A couple of decent tamings right here are a good choice, and then just a belt with some resistances and some life on it. We are using a sulfur flask, a silver flask, an amethyst flask, a granite flask, and a jade flask. And then we have gain charges when you're hit by an enemy. And then we have bench crafted on, damage taken, leeches, and regenerate 3% life per second. And then we have this reduced shock effect. Doesn't matter, it's just the silver flask I had. And then a granite flask and a jade flask. You have something needs to have evasion and something needs to have armor. You could have evasion or armor on your silver flask, evasion or armor on your granite flask, it doesn't matter. Make sure you have evasion and armor percentage on there. And then our jewels are just generic life jewels with like things that we need. This one adds strength and int and increased life that we needed. We don't do any physical damage. That's irrelevant. You don't need that. It's just a cheap jewel. I think I paid 1 chaos for this one. This one happens to have attack damage while holding a shield, which is nice for us. And it has life and strength and int, which we needed. So very, very cheap to get this build put together. On our skills, we are running Precision with Petrified Blood and Vitality auras, and then Leap Slam is our movement ability. You could put Flame Dash or Frost Blink here if you wanted to. We have Cast when damage taken on Steel Skin Punishment and Enfeeble. We have Tempest Shield with Determination and Eternal Blessing. We have Blood Rage, Smite, and Sniper's Mark in our weapon. And we have Lightning Strike with Trinity, Return Proj, and Volatility. The second Lightning Strike is Melee Hit Simulator. It doesn't matter. It's just there so that down here we can see the combined damage of projectiles and melee hit, because we're going to be hitting with both projectiles and melee hits. Because of the way Return Proj works, Whenever we attack a target, the projectile is going to fly out, it's going to hit him, it's going to return, and it's going to hit him. When your little non-vol guy hits the guy, he's going to do a melee hit on him, his projectile is going to fly out, and it's going to return and hit him. When your sniper's mark triggers from your projectile hitting the boss, it's going to fly out, and then that projectile is also going to return and hit him. So there is somewhere between 30 and 150% extra damage that can happen because of return projectiles. And so we can estimate 90% more projectile damage because there's a whole lot of them flying around, and then there's a lot of extra projectiles from sniper's mark flying around, and all that stuff can hit him. It's all at a reduced damage, but there's 5, 6, 7 potential hits on the targets. So just somewhere around 1.5 million is probably a good estimate on the damage. We're just using this to simulate it. But I'm not going to include that in the POB because inevitably it's going to confuse some people. And so this is where we're getting about 1 million DPS right here. But obviously in play it feels much more significant. Now on our tree we are doing a little SCION dance over here to get a life node here. To rush down to evasion and resistances, mage bane, flask mastery, and reflexes here. And then we're dipping out on the Deadeye tree. And we're going Deadeye tree out to more spell suppression here, spell suppression here, and spell suppression here. So we have 100% spell suppression with no spell suppression on our gear. If you get better gear with spell suppression, you can recover these nodes and do something useful with them. We have life mastery, life mastery, life mastery, life mastery, life mastery, life mastery. This is because we are a blood magic build that focuses on life as our primary defense. And then we're reserving about 50% of that life in auras so that we have huge percentage of life bonuses and a very, very solid defensive layer here. We're taking block mastery here and block mastery here. We are 80% chance to block with Testudo anointed onto our amulet and 50% chance to block spell damage. And so these are all of our layers of defense here. We have good evasion, great armor, great block, good spell block, great spell suppression, and then catch resistances, which allows us to have a very solid layer of defenses. Now our recovery is a little bit of life regen and then a little bit of leech. And so that's the primary ways that we are getting recovery into the build. And then on our SCION tree, we are running Witch Ascendancy for you can apply an additional curse so that we can enfeeble the target and get an increased effect of our curses. And then Deadeye, because we absolutely have to have skills fire an additional projectile. If you have 4 projectiles or any even number of projectiles with lightning strike, it is not going to do very good damage because of the way the skill spreads out. So if you did not want to run Deadeye, then you would need to run a 0 quality lightning strike to make sure that you're only firing 3 projectiles, or spec into projectiles on the tree right here to get back up to 5. And so that is how the character is built out. The run went fairly smoothly for the SCION. I was a little concerned about her being the last one, and that is why we saved her for last, but she did pretty good. If you have any questions over anything, just leave a comment down below. I'm happy to answer them as soon as I can. Or come by the Twitch channel. Some of the interactions are a little on the complicated side, and additional explanation helps out a lot. So please feel free to come by Twitch and ask any questions that you have. Other than that, thank you very much. I'll have a wonderful day. Peace.